Hey, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Eating at a Meeting. I am coming to you from my office, and we're here celebrating Women's HERStory Month. And every year for the last 5 years, this is my fifth year doing it, I recognize phenomenal women across the country who are doing instrumental work around food and beverage. And my guest today, always do this wrong, is Femeika Elliott, and she totally epitomizes this theory of doing phenomenal work. She is a food waste practitioner. She is a urban farmer, an educator, an activist, and an organizer, a birth worker, and a womb specialist. Yes, I said womb specialist, who brings people together through food, experiences, and education. So she creates her own events. She's a chef as well, but she's very, very passionate about advocating for Black wellness, maternal health, foodways, and reproductive justice. So welcome to the show, Femeika.
Yes, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And I'm so glad that our friend Jamie Gonzalez, who I recognized her a few years ago, she put me in touch with you. So I'm so excited that she did.
Yes, she's awesome.
She really is. So you have done a lot in the last 5 years, because that's when you started all of your businesses. Let's see. I'm going to say Meik Meals. Is that right?
Yes.
Yep. You started that in 2019, and then in 2022, you started both the in-home nourishment Lotus Program and the food and land justice collective called Rooted Knoxville. And you
Yes.
also have the Knox Garden Alliance. So can you tell us about all of those programs and then how food and beverage connect that?
Yes. So in 2019, Meik Meals, which is a play on my name, no intended to the rapper, but I have my way with words. And so everything is very intentional down to our logos, our names, and the color profiles that we use in our branding kits. Meik Meals started off as a meal education platform, and we also provided healthy meal preps for the community at large. And so we were in a shared commercial kitchen space after we transitioned from being home based, and we started doing pop-ups around town selling plant-based meal preps, and people loved it. But I found myself spending more time educating people on what they were eating, that it was plants curated into their favorite dishes, but just healthier, and explaining the benefits. And so now Meik Meals has sunset from a meal preparation company, and we more so do speaking engagements, community events, and
Okay.
also we're really heavy on the education, especially around health equity for communities, specifically communities of color and rural communities. And
Okay.
so in 2022, I decided to make a pivot based off of a need in the maternal health space and birth work space. And so I bridged my background as a social worker of 9 years with my food pathways career, and hopped in the maternal health space. And so I knew some doulas, some midwives, other practitioners in the birth space that needed my support and that needed medically tailored meals for the clients that they served. And so I founded the Lotus Program experience. So we started as an in-home meal nourishment service for moms postpartum, because about 85% of the mortality that's happening in Tennessee is happening in the postpartum phase. And so
Wow.
I figured that based off my personal experience and loss, and friends and community members, and speaking with birth workers already before I hopped into the space, that I need to have intentional conversations about this and with women, and to assess what they need. So we did a lot of needs assessments, a lot of focus groups, and out of that came, we need food, nourishing food, but not just a standard chef that comes in here. Anybody can cook food, if you're in the chef, you're in the food industry, but it's about curating intentionally sound and nutrient dense food that is optimal for womb recovery. So the same thing that I would prep for a man that's bulking in the gym is not going to be the same for thing that is healing from loss, or whether she successfully has birthed a child. And so since then, our programming has actually expanded full spectrum So I am a full spectrum doula, but my emphasis is on postpartum and death, as I am also a death worker and death doula as well. But with the cornerstone being food and education for our moms and families to nourish them back to optimal health after pregnancy and birth. But also we usher in holistic and traditional and ceremonial practices, birth practices, and postpartum practices. So it can look different. It's not just food, it's some herbalism and pathways, it's some closing of the bone ceremony, ushering her into this new phase of womanhood. It looks like a postpartum Haitian Bane herbal bath, a 3-day bath for recovery. It's spiritually, mentally, and emotionally purging, because we're literally rebirthing this new person, right? As women,
Right.
we have our identity in a lot of things, but pregnancy and birth is one of those. And so all the jobs that I'm tasked with, the many jobs that I'm tasked with is to bring a woman back to optimal health, to where she feels not only like herself, but her best self, in whatever way that she wants to go transcend into her womanhood. And then the Rooted East Knoxville Collective was founded shortly after, with some community members and some comrades within Knoxville. We banded together. We were already in the social justice space and in the movement space doing multiple things, but supporting each other whenever we could. And I left my job. I was working for the government at the time, and I decided that I could do more. So noticing that the area that we serve, which is East Knoxville, it is desolate. You may hear the term food desert, food insecurity. Our community members there are facing food apartheid, which ushers in race, economics, and policy and zoning. And so if you drive down in our neighborhood, you will not see one health food option. We don't even have a smoothie bar or a place where you could go get a healthy salad. It's drive-through liquor stores, convenience markets, $3 generals of whatever chain, and fast food. And so surveying the community members, we got with one of our community elders that is a Black urban farmer, and said, Meek, we're distributing this food on the Fannie Lou, which is named after Fannie Lou Hamer. I was getting a lot of questions. It's like, okay, it's great that food pantries are coming into the community. It's great that we're giving this free produce away. But if people are asking, hey, like, what is this? I'm literally spending an hour on the bus educating. This is an acorn squash. This is a taste profile. This is how you prepare it. This is the benefits. And just mind-blowing. But also we got the question that we had to sit with ourselves when I sat with this elder, and they were saying, well, I wish people would show us how to grow our own food. And so I heard that. And so I said, well, Chris, what are we going to do? He said, well, we need to teach them. We need to teach men, community members, how to fish. Like, it's great that we have food pantries. It's great that we have food rescue, but restoring power back to the people and teaching them how to be community sufficient is what our goal is and was and still is. And so we decided to have this meeting with another community member and 3 other comrades that were working in the social justice space. And said, we're going to focus on food. We're going to focus on food. And so now we serve over 45 households. And we have more than 100 beds on the ground, specifically in the home residences. I will say with the Knox County Community Gardens and Growers Alliance, I did not found that organization, but I run chief of operations for that organization. And my job is to bridge the gap between community, its stakeholders, and other people in the green spaces, to where we're all on one page, forming an alliance, and we're supporting one another. Prior to the alliance being created, there wasn't a space where people in the food space, outside of food policy, growing food, that were getting together. We weren't talking about what each other were doing, how we can support events, things that we may need, resource share, funding share. There was not a space for that. And so when my boss discovered me at a pitch competition, a food systems pitch competition for Rooted East Knoxville, actually, we were competing at the time. He came up to me and he was like, I would like to hire you. You're with community, you're embedded in community, and I feel like that you would be a great pick to help me steer this organization. And so I left my government job about 2 years ago. And I said, I'm all in. I was already embedded in community, but doing community work at 110% is something that I've always dreamed of, and I'm doing it.
That's amazing. So how okay, I'm going to kind of probably go backwards in what everything that you just said. With the Rooted East Knoxville, I think you've installed over 130 garden beds. How have you how has the gardens changed the access to fresh food in the community, and how have you seen the community change as a result of those beds?
Yeah. So our goal is to create a food oasis in East
Mhm.
Knoxville. Our community that we serve lives 47% below the poverty line, and that's Black Knoxville as a whole. Currently in East Knoxville, making at or less than $17,000. When we first started Rooted East, it was $20,000. So that's the average median income in East Knoxville. And also, they have changed the public transportation routes. And so a lot of our community members in that area get around by ride share, public transportation like a bus, biking, walking. However, most of those community members are super young, so they're kids and or they're elderly. A lot of our elders, and a lot of them don't have cars. And so there's not a grocery store in the area that we serve, which is another reason why we were committed to restoring the natural foodways and green spaces in East Knoxville. It takes 2 hours one way to take public transportation as far as a bus to get to the grocery store. And then there you have to worry if you're disabled or have multiple kids, you can't get ice cream, you can't get ice, nothing cold will be defrosted by the time you come back, right? That's like a 6-hour trip theoretically. But also you have to settle for the produce that's there. You know, they may not care for the produce like they care for it in West Knoxville, and that's our reality, right?
Right.
And so it's a lot of factors. It's a lot of factors. So we were like,
Mhm.
let's just build a program to where we bring everything here, hyper local, and focus right on this community, and that's what we do. So we do skill sharing, community building, capacity building, emergency preparedness. It's not just food centered, but food is one of the focal points. We address the social determinants of health, like
Mhm.
legs, right, under a table. So you can't just address one thing, the whole table is going to fall. So if our community members ask, hey, we need bus passes to get around, or we need y'all to adjust this time, we're going to do it because that's how they thrive. That's how our program remains successful. And they're asking, they're telling us what we're needing to provide to them so that they can
Right.
become sufficient again. And so year 3-ish, we're at 3 years. I said 3-ish because operating
Mhm.
fully staffed now. But a lot of them are taking interest in expanding their gardening operations. So we're at phase 2 of our programming now. And so they're
Mhm.
asking for chicken coops, they're asking for
Oh,
like
wow.
barrels, they're asking for all the things. And so we're committed to that. And so we just delivered a chicken coop about 2 weeks ago to one of our, we call her an OG member because she's been with us since the start. And she has expanded her garden even without us. So, like, they'll get
Nice.
like old dressers or something on the side of the road. They're like, I could use that to a garden bed. That's going to be a herb bed. And they do the thing, they send us the little pictures. And they're like, look what I found. Like, look what I did with it. And I'm like, okay, this is like, yes. So, like,
Mhm.
we're this year we're looking to do like HGTV, like my cribs thing, like, but like garden edition, like home garden.
Mhm.
And to just see people taking an active interest in their health and their welfare is
Mhm.
enjoyable for me. Like that's how I
Right.
know that I have done my job even at a early stage in my career still.
Mhm.
Is that people are expanding their interests and they're executing on it. And
Right.
that all comes with being compassionate and providing people with care and with the education that they need to fortify and sustain themselves.
Well, there's two things that it reminds me of. Years ago when I lived in Atlanta and we were teaching, I was working with Cook's Warehouse and we were going into one of the school systems to teach the cafeteria workers how to make hummus and how to make, fresh spaghetti sauce and things like that. But it also came down to like, let's, through the farmers markets, let's send people, they get SNAP benefits, double the SNAPs if they go to the farmers market. But like you said earlier, I'm like, they look at this fruit or this vegetable and go, what do I do? What is this? And what do I do with it?
Yeah.
And so the fact that you're providing that education on those fruits and, what they're planting and helping them learn that, it is a whole nother level. And I think, and I was chatting with Allie last week, who's teaching kids in foster care how to cook. It gives you such a level of empowerment when you know how to cook versus just the microwave.
It does. And a lot of our home garden participants, like we're at cohort 5 now. And so all of them are like asking, okay, now that I know what companion planting is, I have successfully mastered this gardening skill, because most of them were amateur gardeners. They didn't know anything about gardening, which is why we provide the curriculum throughout January to December on 101 basics, and then we start with like advanced classes and all the things. But they were like, okay, now that I'm comfortable with growing these 3 things, these 4 things in this garden bed, what can I do besides make a salad, Miss Femeika? And I was like, whoa, okay, here we go. So we have been doing canning classes, preservation classes. I see the winter herbalism class in the fall, gearing up for winter. And it's been so exciting to like see them like, okay, I'm trying to, like, I heard somebody say, I'm trying to figure out the taste profile. And I was like, okay. Like, it was so like, they like kind of like regurgitate, like, what they've been learning, what they hear from each other, and then yourself being a practitioner. And so, yeah, they're like, okay, I got all these tomatoes outside of soup. What can I do? And so that's when we brought an elder in of the community. That's also, she's a part of Women in Agriculture. She's been farming forever now, and she teaches our canning classes. So they know how to make salsa, they know how to make and pickles, and pickled okra. The pickled okra flies every time.
Like, we love pickled okra in my house. Yes, it's so good. Yeah. And it's sometimes better because okra gets that gooey stuff in the middle of it if it gets too old. Yeah. But I mean, and even if you just can the tomatoes and dice them, and that's better than buying that can later on in the winter time, because you've got your fresh tomatoes that you just did.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's just jump back again to the postpartum thing. That is, I've never had a kid before, so I don't know any of this, but that's fine. That's really intriguing to understand that you're doing all of these herbalistic and holistic things along with the food to what does the woman need after she's had a baby, food wise? And
Yes. So we really zone in and hyper focus on the first 40 days. So what a womb and what the woman archetype needs to sustain herself post birth, right? We are giving away our iron, our blood supply, our energy, and our emotions, right? And so the first 40 days, especially that first week, we look into very dense broths. So like your chicken broths, your bone broths with collagen, to restore that back to her womb and her temple, to where it brings her energy levels up. We are hydrating. It doesn't just have to be water. It can be teas, especially teas in high iron. So I use a lot of nettle tea. It's really dark and rich. It tastes very earthy, but it restores what, based off the blood, right, that has left the woman during and even after childbirth. It was also boosting her libido and her energy up too. We focus on a lot of immune boosting herbs and foods, so like a lot of mushroom soups, a lot of stews, things that are difficult to digest. We focus on after the 40 days. And so we're doing a lot of like flour stews, a lot of like warm beverages to keep the womb warm. So that's how we cultivate babies, right? It's like putting a seed in the ground. It has to be warm. Sun has to be watered. Same thing with nourishing a mother. That womb has to be warm to get back to optimal health and support and functioning. And so it may look like outside of teas, coconut water. I tell my clients, eat your fruit, eat your water. So a lot of watermelons, a lot of cantaloupes, things like that. And then if we have lactating moms that choose to breastfeed, I have to be even more intentional with their eating regimens and with their herbal practices, because some things can offset and block their milk production. So it's a lot of factors that come into play. That's why I said it's not just a traditional chef, especially that comes from the commercial food scene, would not be really do my job unless you really dive deep into what a woman needs to sustain herself, period, even if she's not pregnant.
Right. Now, how did you find all of that out?
Yeah.
Because that's, because you're not learning that in culinary school.
Right. No,
You
they
know,
won't
yeah.
do this in culinary school. So that's why I'm a food pathways practitioner. So food pathways practitioner is somebody that is versatile in the commercial kitchen space, but more so operates off of ancestral medicine, wisdom handed down, either physically taught or orally taught by the elder guard, right? The people that have been doing it longest, right? Without an actual book, without an actual institution or university. And so I have my own story in birth loss. I experienced birth loss when I was actually in college. However, I didn't really have the opportunity or the time to really sit with it. So when it happened, it just happened, right? But it hit me later. And so my message to women has always been like, postpartum is not the first 40 days. Postpartum is forever, but you can always you identify with it. So I don't identify or resonate with my loss. I believe that my loss propelled me to do the work that I'm intentionally designed to do now for the community, for other women. And then I also am an auntie and a godmother to over 10 kids. I've been raising kids
since I was
10 years old. Like a lot of my sister friends, which I'm the only girl out of my biological siblings, but a lot of my sister friends are mothers already. Like they physically have kids or they have lost. And so a lot of it came by way of me having conversations with them, leaving me out of it, on top of my baby cousin that got pregnant when she was at Fisk University during her last semester of college. So I was launched Lotus then, but I was bringing her food preps up to college because the meal options there weren't sustainable and sufficient for her at the time. And so she sat down with me and she said, "Hey, I think that this should be something." And I was like, "Girl, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just bringing you food." We're not going to eat this cafeteria food. Like I've already been in there and it's gross, no shade, but it wasn't substantial. And so later on, she's fast forward 1 year postpartum. During that phase, I was working with her on educating her how to use her EBT, how to save her EBT and maximize on what she was getting, teaching her Double Up program as a food educator. I feel like that's my job because a lot of people don't know about the Double Up program and that you have EBT and WIC at farmers markets, farmer stands, fruit stands, or by and so now her kids run kicking and screaming outside the farmers market because they're like, no, like it's a daily, like it's a little weekly ritual for them. And she's learning how to save money on the front end and the back end, right? But she also knows how to grow her own food. So her and her two daughters are out there with me at the community garden, and we're growing our own food. And she's seeing that offset costs. So the program is truly holistic, but I sat intentionally with my friends, with the birth community, the clients that were already serving that weren't any of my clients. And I wanted to ask, like, how do you want this program to work for you? How will it work? What would you like to see? And so we've still made some adjustments along the way, but how our program is structured within Lotus, we provide the first 40 days of meal nourishment for womb support and care. And then we provide our holistic emotional support modalities to kind of bring that mother back to her center and usher her into this new phase.
Wow. Okay. Completely tangent, not necessarily what you do, but okay. Women in menopause. There's a lot of conversations
I'm so glad you're bringing this up.
We're talking about menopause so much more out in the open now. So how does this, what do I do?
Yes.
You know?
So as a womb health practitioner, like I said, the Lotus program is actually full spectrum. So a lot of women, I just had this conversation. It's been like a reoccurring theme for the past 3 weeks now, since I went to the community health fair, because I am a community health worker. And these two women walk up and they saw the Lotus program sign and they're like, oh, this is for pregnancy. This is for postpartum. I said, no, come back over here. And so I said, so this logo may be misleading for you. I said, but my goal is that when a woman walks into our womb spa and that she consults with us or whatever offerings or services she is taking advantage of, she is going to be birthing a new her. That starts your journey. When you walk into my office, it starts a new journey, and you're going to birth a new you, a higher you, a you that you cannot even imagine yet. And so we intentionally walk with women throughout their journeys, whether you're experiencing fertility issues and you want to talk to a holistic womb practitioner or pathway specialist prior to IVF. We talk about women who are birthing, that are pregnant, who postpartum, who have lost, who have had medical procedures, experience endometriosis, fibroids, ovarian cysts, menopausal women. And now, like, menopause has entered the chat where people are being comfortable with talking about it, right? And all the things. My mother was my first menopausal client. So I know that what I do works, right? Providing people with viable solutions, but also walking with them every step of the way and not making things so overwhelming, and letting them know we're restoring power back to you. We're not empowering you. We're restoring the power back to you, because you always have had it. It's just we've listened to outsiders instead of listening to our bodies. And so this talk around menopause, I talk with women that want to consult with me. So we talk about, what is your eating regimen like currently? What do you want it to look like? So we talk about viable solutions there. We talk about what medications are you on? What medications you want to kind of like taper off of? Okay, here are the herbs that are intentionally designed to do X, Y, and Z. This is recommended and suggested. I'm not a doctor. I'm a folkways practitioner, right? And so they start working the plan, and then we talk about, okay, what does your exercise plan look like? It doesn't have to be HIIT. It doesn't have to be hard cardio. Are you stretching? Are you moving your womb? Are you talking to her? Are you doing deep breathing? Are you sitting your butt down and just meditating for 5 minutes with no music, just laying there, right? Because a lot of these reproductive ailments are stress and anxiety induced. And so my goal is to also bridge these women that are coming into the space with regenerative medicine and other holistic health professionals. So we do a lot of outputs to acupuncturists, massage therapists, cranial therapists, cupping, dry needling, somatic movement, EDMR, therapists, all the things. And so I'll say, when you come into this space, I want you to have so many things in your toolkit to where you don't need me. And every week you're literally trying these things, and you're trusting your body, and you're listening to yourself. You're like, oh, this works. So I've been working with my mom unintentionally as a informal client for the past 4 years. Since then, she has gone from night sweats and hot flashes to none. And
really?
She just told me last week that if she has hot flashes, they only last for 2 seconds and they go away. So she's also like manic. Like a lot of women don't know, like kind of like we have like the symptoms like PDD, somewhere around there, like going to like psychosis. That's not a thing. So she's regulated her hormones, regulated her emotions, but she's also increased her libido and her vitality. So she has a lot of energy. My mother is not old, but she was very low in energy when she first hit perimenopause. And so it looks different. Like it looks totally different now. So she was at the health fair. So she heard what I was saying, talking to these other 2 Black women, and she came back around. Hey, I just want to let y'all know, like, my daughter, like I was my daughter's first client for the menopause program. And she was like, I don't really have like a case file or anything, but she tried to, get me on this regimen, and I didn't listen to her. But then I started integrating things when I saw things on the internet. So like, the TikTok specialist, right? So Yeah, she integrated everything what I was trying to get her to do, and she's more active. She's in the garden with me, so she is our land steward for our beds. And yeah, it's been nice to know that like women, like we already have the viable solutions. It's just we need to find people that will kind of like package it all together and condense it into our
Mm-hmm.
to where it's not overwhelming, where we're going down the rabbit hole or spending so much time on YouTube or Google. And so
Right.
most all my clients for every service that we have had, everything has been trial ran first before I even launch it as a service. So
Okay.
doing testing and being sure that it works, but also
Mm-hmm.
tweaking it to say, okay, hey, like what do we need to change here before we even put this out as an offering?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to throw this tangent in here. So, make America healthy again. What would some people say about the? I'm like, probably some people are going to say you're kooky, but I mean, I think it's in that whole realm of make America healthy again, right? Using real food, using holistic practices versus buying what's in the center of the grocery store,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. I
Or
call it danger zone.
going on the whatever diet today, right?
Yeah. 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 I call that the danger zone. So
The danger zone.
yeah, so I teach community like the layouts of the grocery store. So I
Mm-hmm.
always say, let's work the perimeter of the grocery store. This is where the party is at. So you're gonna go and get your fresh breads, and you're gonna work your way to the fresh meats counter, then you're gonna work your way to the vegetables, right? And then you're gonna work your way to whatever else is up there. And then the middle
Right.
part is where the party is at. They're screaming, the Cheerios are screaming, the sugar is screaming, the cookies, juice, high fructose corn syrup, like everything's screaming in this middle. And so I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, get what you need first out here, work your way from the frozen part, and then go on the inside
Mm-hmm.
and limit yourself.
Right.
Like, no, you don't have to, strip everything, but pay attention to how much you're spending. Like I had a
Mm-hmm.
client do like a simulation. I said, okay, don't go to the outside yet. Go get what you usually get, and we're gonna see how much of those things came from the inside the middle of the grocery store. And she spent over $300 in the middle of the grocery store.
Wow. And how
So like,
many meals did she get out of that, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
well, it wasn't meals; it was junk food,
Right.
processed food. And so when you like get people visually to see, like we have to break things down differently for certain people. And so when she
Mm-hmm.
saw it, oh my goodness,
Right. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And so
Yeah.
now she does that method about working her way on the outside, and then she works her way in. And most importantly, I tell my community members, make your list. What you need.
Right.
What are your needs? What are your
Mm-hmm.
negotiables? But you can't leave here without. And that's
Right.
what they do. But in
Well, I
my
went to
reality,
it.
um, getting back to your question, making America healthy again or healthier,
Mhm.
um, I envision it providing what an individual needs to thrive and sustain themselves holistically. And I know people throw that term around holistic. They think like woo woo herbalism. No, Eastern medicine was the original medicine. So when people say alternative, I'm like, no, like it only became that way when Western medicine came on, right, onto the scene. I respect both, but I resonate heavy with unnecessary interventions and starting with folk ways medicine first, because traditionally, historically, that's what has worked for people that look like me. And
Mm-hmm.
and so like no barriers, no barriers. Everybody should have access. I don't care
Yeah.
what your median income. Everybody should have access. So whether it's universal health care, whether it's having options, not just
Mm-hmm.
one thing, one end all be all. You have options. You're heard. You're respected. You're validated. You have a doctor that looks like you that operates in integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Community care. Bring community care back. What happened with community care? We were doing community acupuncture. We were doing community wellness and rest days. We were doing community health fairs, community resource fairs, all the things, right? And so, yeah, I feel like that's what, to me, that's what uh that's what I envision. And then, of course,
Right.
having gardens on every corner where people can walk to that's easily accessible
Mm-hmm.
without a fence and
Right.
without paying $200 for a garden bed, because people do that. Like, no
Right.
shade, in reality, the people that truly need access to these type of foods and nutrient dense foods don't have, that's a barrier. And why are we
Right.
putting gates around food?
Well, in my neighborhood, we could to keep the bears out. But
Well, yeah. But
yeah.
other than that,
Yeah.
like,
Exactly. Yeah.
a lot of people do it for humans, right? And they say, oh,
Mm-hmm.
they're stealing the food. They're stealing the
No.
food. Something that we just 10 of these plants came from one seed, and you're in an uproar about stuff that should be free anyways. I always say
Right.
growing your own food is like printing your own money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been so liberating.
I
Like
love that.
getting back into the land. Like summer is my like favorite seasons because community like is so lively, especially like communities of color. Like we don't really like the wintertime, just to be honest. I don't do the cold, so like cold crops aren't really our thing. We'll grow maybe
Mm-hmm.
until like fall, but wintertime, yeah, we shut it down. We're letting the garden rest, just traditionally. But you get the peppers, the tomatoes, like it's like a party in the garden, and we have so much abundance. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's really like printing your own money. Like I save so much money during
I
the
love that
summer.
analogy. That's so good. Last week I was at in Austin for food tanks, all things food, and Sam Ocho is a former NFL football player, and in Chicago he helped a neighborhood and I don't remember where it was in Chicago, but similar to you, sat down and listened to them and like, liquor store, liquor store, liquor store, no grocery stores, and help these kids create their own market.
Yes.
And what I thought was really empowering by that is that they got rid of one specific liquor store,
Mm-hmm.
and the police said they noticed how some of the crime actions had come down
Yeah.
because they had done that. And same thing with what you're talking about.
Yes, that's the thing we've seen in our community. Positive physical health outcomes. So positive
Mm-hmm.
doctors reports. Most of the people that entered our program were borderline diabetic or already having severe like asthmatic symptoms or some type of, you know, diagnosis or illness. So positive medical reports, positive emotional health, and mental health outcomes. So as they got back to the land, got their hands in the soil and cultivating and providing them with that confidence, right? We had a boost of morale, but we also had their mental health, it improved a lot. Like just by being outside, soaking up the fresh air,
Mm-hmm.
but also just taking that strain off about what am I going to eat or how am I going to be able to, like, can I even purchase a head of organic romaine lettuce today?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so on top of like reducing, I haven't pulled the violence statistics from last year, but I'm sure that they went down. Because we had
Yeah.
a lot of shooting and domestic violence in the community before we started this. And so a lot of that blight has kind of decreased as well because
Mm-hmm.
we also work with our partners that are in the community garden space. So for the Alliance, since I do that as well, we take over abandoned lots. We purchase them by leveraging our social capital. And so
Nice.
sometimes it's like, just restoring the natural food landscape and the natural landscape, like plant some pollinators over here. Why we got all these, this monkey grass over here? Like get rid of it.
Right.
Easy
Mm-hmm.
basic.
Yeah.
Get rid of it. And so it's like people have taken an active interest in seeing how great their community can look. And so they're
Right.
appreciating it more to where, hey, if an elder sees you drop a piece of trash, they're probably either going to call me or they're going to bicker at you about throwing that piece of trash on the ground. Like they do not play
Right.
about that now. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so was there a specific moment in all of what you're doing here in the last 5 years that you really realized that this was your calling?
I've been knew that it was when I quit my job when I quit my government job, because I realized that even though I was serving community within those four walls and outside of those four walls, I was still limited based off of the restrictions that I was working with within that silo. And so when I made the leap, community accepted me with open arms. They're like, "You don't work there no more?" And I'm like, "No." And I'm like, "Oh man, yes, we got access 110%." And so they see me, you know, I'm able to walk around in community and say, "Hey, how you doing?" You know, and I'm like, "Hey, Miss Femeika, good to see you today. Can you come and check on these collards? Like, I'm trying to see if they're right." And I'm like, "Reach out to our home garden manager." They're like, "No, I want you to come over here." You know, so I knew that I knew that my purpose was bringing people together through food and experiences by way of education. Since I started Meik Meals, that's why I started Meik Meals, because I realized before that, cooking for my friends and family, we were bringing people together. People were having conversations, having hard conversations too. Just realizing that people were just so out of touch with themselves and community and don't really know how to do community. But when you bring people over food, you realize we're not that much different. And so I feel like I have solved a lot of disagreements over food and libations. And so I believe that you can solve anything over a good meal and some libations with moderation.
Right.
I love restoring power back to people, autonomy and sovereignty over themselves out of whatever systems that we have historically relied on. So whether that's the health system, whether that's, you know, the food, industrial, medical complex, even the nonprofit complex, knowing that you don't got to have a 501c3 to serve your community. As community members, Rooted East is rooted in community, but we're also community led. And so we don't move until the community moves, and they tell us how to move. And we always report back to them. What do y'all want to see? This is our program. They told us last week. We had our meet and greet. But also, I knew that it was my calling when I decided to collect the stories, the Black food stories of our Black elders in East Knoxville. So for Black History Month, over the past 2 years, we have been working with the filmmaker to produce a documentary film. Within Knoxville, we have like a Black historical museum. We have several artists like the McClung Museum, but they don't have anything about Black foodways specifically in East Knoxville. And so when I was sitting with these elders, because I worked with these elders in community for over 7 years, they've been telling me about all these food stories. I was like, "What? You used to garden?" They're like, "Yeah, I'm trying to get back to that. Can y'all do something?" I'm like, "Hold on, let me get this story. Let me get this story," you know? And I was like, I'm not a journalist. I'm not like, but I also am a storyteller when it comes to food origins and how we got here, right? And hearing about these stories that weren't even documented in a newspaper at these museums, let alone visually, I was like, "Oh yes, we have something amazing here, and we need to record it," especially while we work intergenerationally between us, the elders, and even our youth in the schools. Like, it's very important to capture that. And so for Black History Month, we had a 3-day film screening that sold out in our independent movie theater here, called Roots of Resilience, East Knoxville's Black Food Stories. And so we're gonna go on tour next year with the film. But a lot of people have been asking, when are we going to see it again? And we're like, we're going to bring it back. But, you know, other people want to hear from us, and other communities to hear from us, to let them know that, hey, this model is able to be replicated. You may need a few tweaks, but you're very much to do it. We were working for free for 3 years before we were able to fully fund 2 paid staff positions this year.
Wow.
So all because, you know, people answered the call, right? But also people had a common goal and cared about a multitude of things in the social justice realm, but food was being neglected.
Wow. I am just so impressed by all the work that you've done. It is so inspiring. And so you've accomplished so much in 5 years, 6 years now. My last question for you, where do you see the next 5 years going with all of your businesses, and how these elders and these youths will be combined together in talking about food?
Absolutely. So I always have a 10-year plan, so I love when people ask me. But so with Rooted East, so we have 2 paid full staff members now. We've hired internally and also from, the social justice, I guess, work within Knoxville. And so I stepped back as a founder, and I am more on an advisory role and support staff for me. So I'm unpaid. I'm still volunteering and offering my insights and expertise. And so we're going to continue to collect these stories. We're going to continue to tell the story with integrity of Black East Knoxville, because this also has been a thing where journalists, whether they're independent or work for a media medium, they are leaving some things out, important things, right? Because they're scared of what people are going to say. We aren't those people. And so we uplift and we amplify the stories of how our elders want them to be told. And, seeing them on the big screen is like evergreen, right? And this is also a documentary that we have gifted to community. So when we get done with the tour, we're going to house it at our only Black bookstore in the city that sits directly in East Knoxville, in the bottom, which historically was a place where the city displaced and destroyed a lot of Black historical homes for gentrification. Wow. And so that artifact will sit there, and then we will also have it on reserve to be sure that it's always going to be circulating and that community will have access to it. But still recording our journey, still amplifying. We're getting into land preservation. So you're going to see a lot from us around land trust, community-owned spaces. That's nice. Where we're going with our activism and advocacy. So going beyond just food, but we're talking about preserving land for growing food and for collective wellness. From me in the health and wellness space, you're going to see from me around maternal health care, advocacy there, especially around reproductive justice and rights. And I'm leaning more into that since we have a team set up with Rooted East. So this allows me to have more time and space and opportunity to serve women that truly need to be served. So I'm super excited.
That's awesome. All right. I just came up with one final question for you. How do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as the person that always gave 110% and the person that always remained in integrity, lighthearted, light-spirited, but also did not play about her community. Stood 10 toes down in the face of adversity. And that speak up about injustices. Speak up about, and have tenacity and have the mental fortitude, but also to know and to sit and to rest with that I am human. And I do not want my community to put me on a pedestal because I do make mistakes and I will disappoint you. So we just had that conversation like last month. I'm not a superhero. I'm not a martyr. I want to be remembered for doing the right thing, to do the just thing, and to do what people should have been doing a long time ago. For any community that needs something, answering the call, simple, with viable solutions, whether you get paid or not. The money will come. And that's what I told my team. The money will come. Don't worry about that. And it has. And we're sustaining, but also we're not dependent upon funding. We were very creative and innovative individuals. We were taking dressers off the side of the road, converting them into things. We don't have any worries. So when people mention, all the things that are happening with the federal government, we're like, I hear you. But we have been doing this. You just have entered the chat and entered our reality.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. I'm going to reiterate the fact that I just adore you and I'm so proud and excited about everything that you do. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. So I am putting up here how to connect with Femeika. This is all of her Instagram handles.
Yes, thank you.
So you've got the Rooted East Knox, you've got the Meik Meals, the Lotus Program Experience, and the Knox Garden Alliance. And I'll leave that up for a second. So you can connect with her on LinkedIn, but they're also the same as on Facebook for pretty much the same thing. And so, connect with her there and see how you can help the community in East Knoxville. And and just women in general. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tracy, for having me. We could do this again. Let me know whenever you need me again.
Yes, ma'am. Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay. All right. Well, everybody, stay safe and eat well. There's 2 more episodes next week, next Wednesday and Thursday, to round out the Women's HERStory Month, with fabulous women just like Femeika here that are doing great work in food and beverage. So until then, stay safe and eat well. Thanks.
Bye.